Welcome back to Introduction to Sociology. This week we are going to be talking about groups. Groups are a very big, important part of our society. It really plays into how we act, why we act, and explains some of our behaviors. Human behavior is not random. It's based on patterns. Every human behavior has a purpose. Now, some of those purposes might not be right up at the forefront that you can see and identify, but there is a purpose behind behaviors. Our society uses the term groups, kind of loosely. We might say, oh, well, that group over there, and it's just some people standing around. But sociology has a definition for groups. It is two or more people that have ties together in one way or another. They interact frequently. Now, there has to be a frequency to it. And there's an identity. Charles Cooley, the sociologist Charles Cooley, who comes from the perspective of symbolic interactionism, came up with two types of group. You have primary group and you have secondary group. The primary group is your family. You have a great big bond with your family, ties, very close ties most of the time. Your friends group. These are people that are close to you, you spend a lot of time with. That's your primary group. The secondary group would be that you're participating with for a goal. This could be the marching band, the sports group, if you're on a team, AA, if you're participating in Alcoholics Anonymous or student council. You are a group, you're together, you have ties, there's frequency, but it's not as deep of ties that you would have with your primary group. In both of these types of groups, you follow the norms and behaviors of that group when you were in there, when you're with them. Has your mother or father ever said, if your friends jumped off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge? Well, I want you to think about that for a minute. And I want you to be really, really honest with yourself. You're not telling anybody. You're kind of answering for yourself. Have you ever done anything that was dumb or a bad decision or that went against what you probably believed in or probably wouldn't do when you were with a group that you had very close ties to? This is where peer pressure comes in. This is why that works. You may say, oh, I don't give in to peer pressure, but if you think back, and it doesn't have to be large, it doesn't have to be a major decision, but something that you probably normally wouldn't have done, but because of the group of people that you were with and the norms and their expectations, you followed along. If we're all being honest, we've all done something. Again, small, maybe large. Solomon Asch, in the 1950s, he was a sociologist, performed an experiment that he called the Asch conformity experiment to kind of prove this. And so what he did was he had some volunteers come in, and they were part of the experiment. They knew what was going on. And then they would have somebody come in that had no clue what was going on. And so he drew 3 lines. He drew 3 lines on a paper, and what he was trying to see, the sociological question that he was asking was, in a group, would a person be more likely to conform to a wrong answer if the majority of the group went with the wrong answer? And so one line was obviously longer than the others, and the people that were in the part of the experiment would purposely pick out the wrong line, the shorter line instead of the longer line. And what Asch found was that the more people that picked out the wrong number, then the person that was participating in the experiment would go with the wrong line. And if you look at our society and a lot of things that have happened, this is how many behaviors and people conform, especially if there is a tighter bond and ties to that group. Now, if you just walked up to a group, you had no ties with them, and they said, hey, let's go rob the bank, and they were standing outside the bank, you're most likely going to walk away and say no. But if you're in a group that you have very close ties to, this is your friends group, they say, hey, let's go down to the quarry and jump off the quarry into the big lake or the pond or the water at the quarry. If all of the group does it, you are more inclined to join them, even though there's a sign that says, do not jump off the quarry. And this is how groups affect us and how we participate in groups. Groups also depend on leaders. And how the group responds depends on the type of leadership. There's what's called instrumental leadership and expressive leadership. Now, a good part of our society, instrumental, is more of giving instructions, setting up rules, coming from more of no emotion, in a sense. And expressive leaders are those that lend support, look at the emotions of the group, kind of think about the support. Our society tends to, and has in the past, looked at men as instrumental leaders and women as expressive leaders. If you look at some of the females, and this is probably why we've never had a female president yet. It's Hillary Clinton tried, but it's more of our society looks at instrumental leaders as leaders that can provide better leadership. That's not necessarily so. But we see men as instrumental leaders and women as expressive leaders. There's also different styles of leadership. You have the authoritative leadership. Authoritative leadership is just coming in, giving rules. Here's no, you don't think. Here's what you're going to do. This is how it's going to be. Everybody needs to follow the rules. There's some positives to this. You would be surprised to know that Martin Luther King Jr. was thought of as an authoritative leadership. If you think about it, and it makes a little sense, or it makes a lot of sense, with his leadership style of authoritative, he came in, and it wasn't that it was a dictatorship. That's not what authoritative means, but there are positives to authoritative leadership, and then there are cons to it. But Martin Luther King Jr. was able to take control and say, look, we need civil rights, we need changes, and people were able to follow him. He was a charismatic leader. He spoke well. He was a great leader. But he kind of was setting, this is the way we need to do things. If we're going to change the way society looks, there needs to be social change. Charismatic leaders have the ability to draw people in. If you think about leaders that have that, they can talk well. They get people excited, in a sense. Another authoritative leader and a charismatic leader was Adolf Hitler. This is more on the negative. If you've ever thought, how in the world could a country follow and kill so many people based on their religion, and it wasn't just the Jewish religion, it was anybody that was weak, considered disabled. And so how could a country, knowing that this is wrong, follow a leader like that? And it goes back to this whole group. One, you had a charismatic, authoritative leader. People followed into it. He was able to convince them that it was the economy breakdown in Germany was the fault of the Jewish people. And as other people, even though that they knew it was wrong, as you get those, they were conforming. And so with that authoritative and charismatic leader, they were able to achieve, or Adolf Hitler was able to achieve, a good part of his goal. Another type of leadership is democratic. Democratic is they give the group the opportunity to make decisions, be creative, play a part into this. With the leadership, the Democratic leadership would give their points, their ideas, and then everybody would get to be a part of this. Democratic leadership is good. The downfall of Democratic leadership in a group is it could be slower to progress. Because if you look at, if everybody's getting a vote, people may not agree, everybody has different opinions, and so that group may not progress to the goals that they need. A third leadership style is laissez-faire. This is French for leave it alone. A laissez-faire leader is, okay, you guys, we have trust in you. You do what you want. I'm just going to sit back here. I'm a leader, but, you guys decide on how the group will run. This type of leader, it can have some pros, but the cons are it really gets stuck. It doesn't progress at all in a lot of the groups. But those are the three types of leadership styles. Another types of groups are the in-group and the out-group. So in-group and out-group, how you can think about this is, an example might be sororities or fraternities. You join one sorority and they're telling you no, that other sorority across the street is bad, we have nothing to do with them. Country club members, that's kind of an in-group. If you're in the in-group, you're part of that, you feel that, and it's that other group over there, that's the out-group. We want nothing to do with them. There's conflict. A lot of people want to be in the in-group. You hear of the popular group. You're in the popular group or you're not in the popular group. And there's names for different groups. And so that would be the in-group and the out-group. If you also think about conformity in in-groups and out-groups, gangs. Gangs are huge. You wonder why people join gangs. First of all, it provides the ties and bonds that a lot of people are looking for. And people join groups because it's believed that groups are better informed. They know what they're doing. It's better to be part of a group than make an individual decision. And this works great with families and your friend groups. Gangs, if you think about, and let's go back to the in-group and out-group. In Los Angeles, California, that is known as the gang capital of America. There are 450 active gangs, and with over 45,000 members at this point in time. And in 2016, 60% of homicides in Los Angeles came back to gang-related. If you've heard anything about gangs, you've probably heard the Bloods and the Crips. This is very much of an in-group and out-group. They were rivals, and a lot of death took place because of this. These groups had colors. You have red for the Bloods, they would wear their colors to pronounce that they were in that group. That's very much of a big in-group, out-group with a lot of conflict, and it's led to a lot of homicides. Let's look at another group that has a great impact in our society and on our lives. It's called a reference group. You're walking down the halls in the high school. You see what people are wearing. That gives you reference. Okay, that's what's in. I need to wear t-shirt or concert shirt or whatever's in fashion right now. The reference groups also can come from media. Media is a very big source. If you remember in the last chapter of socialization, that's a big socialization agent, is media. If you're watching TV, you also may learn how to ask people out. I mentioned that last week. How do you ask people out? How do you go on a date? You look at reference groups. Those that you feel like you have a tie to, or you want to fit in, or that's how you want to be. That's your norms and values. And so you look at those groups as a reference on how to behave. If you think about, you've joined the basketball team, that's a group. It can also be an in-group and an out-group. That sports team. Well, how do the athletes act in the halls and treat other people? How do you walk down the halls? What do you wear? There's that norms and values of that group. Right or wrong, this is the way society works. And so the reference group, so if you've joined the basketball team, you're going to watch the other players of, okay, who do I talk to? Who do I don't talk to? What's expected? Now, there's always, it doesn't mean that society's always doing this and everybody conforms. There are people that want to stand out. And will do the difference and are able to say, I'm going to be different. But this is how groups work. This really plays into our interactions with each other and our society. Some groups that we choose to be part of, and then there's groups that we don't. It's not our choice to be part of. And some of those groups could be total institution. Now, total institution can be agreed upon. Military is a total institution. You are going in, and you agreed you had to sign up to go into the military, but they control everything in your life. You think about a naval ship, everything's controlled. You're told what to do, what to eat, all of that. That's a choice. Prison is very similar. That's a total institution. You're completely told when to go to bed, what to get up, what to wear. Same thing. That's not really a choice. In a sense it is, because if you break the law, then you're going to end up in prison. But that you're kind of put there against your will. That's not really where you wanted to end up. You may have made the choice in the behavior that ended there, but you didn't make a choice to go to prison. You'd much rather have gotten probation and stayed out. So that's total institution. One more point I want to make out on groups. So I'm going to the Kid Rock concert. I'm there with people. This is sometimes how we use groups loosely in our society. Everybody there has the same bond. We like Kid Rock or his music, and so that's why everybody paid for the money to go to the concert. And yes, there are ties. We have some same interest, but there's not the frequency. People standing in line at Starbucks. Those people like Starbucks coffee and paying high prices for coffee. But that's, and you might say, oh, that group over there. But that's really called an aggregate. Aggregate is, there is a similar interest, but it's not the frequency. It's not coming together. There's really no ties other than that. But now, sometimes that can become into a group. So think about Hurricane Dorian has caused a lot of damage. And so people are now coming together and helping, or the neighbors are helping each other, or neighborhoods, the island. And in that, they may form groups and become closer, where it becomes more of a secondary or even a primary group. It started off as one interest and helping others, and it can build, those relationships can build. So that's groups this week. I hope that it made all sense, and I will see you next week. Have a good day.